Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning. Whenever you decide to click on this video, this is not clickbait. We are actually going to be reviewing the 1985 drama Ran that was that was directed by Akira.
Kurosawa.
Yeah, I can't pronounce that name. I'm not going to try it. It
Kurosawa?
was the plot's from, as in the title, the plot's from a Shakespeare play called King Lear. And I don't know about the rest of the panel, but I've seen the play and I've read it a few dozen times for school because, well, education, dot, dot, dot. Um, so this was Omanal's pick. This is his foreign flick
All
for
on him.
this month because it's his birthday month. So, with that being said, happy birthday. I don't actually know when his birthday is. I'm going to continue saying it otherwise. Why did you pick this movie?
Because it was one of the. I like sometimes when we were doing the samurai, and let's be honest, it was the 1980s. Everyone had the mystic version of the samurai. We all remember Oriental Adventures, all the ninjas and stuff. And Akira Kurosawa, one is I like the Seven Samurai and things. And my parents saw this film in 1985. I saw it years later, but you know, I'm going. If you go ahead and play in anything that's going to be Japanese, this is a perfect film to watch, in my view. Any of his films for that era, I think, are great. So I picked it because visually, it's a beautiful film, and I think it's sweeping scenery of what they're talking about. If you're ever going to do a game,
Yeah, I get that. For Japanese films, I think this is maybe the third or fourth one of this. Definitely the first one of this director, but just of that region, their style of movies, I think this might have been the third or fourth one. I think the first two were about mobsters, but this one was definitely interesting. So considering you picked it, I imagine you liked the movie. Is there any part of this movie to you that sticks out more than the other?
oh, there are a few things I like about it, but I think a lot of it just comes from the visuals, especially when they decide to do the castle.
Oh god,
And,
yeah.
I mean, like I said, visually it's fantastic. Just because at one, he starts leaving the castles on fire behind him, and that doesn't look like a miniature set to me. I could be
No,
wrong, but
no, that looks like they actually built it up, and
did they lit it on
whoever,
fire? I mean,
yeah, yeah,
and the smoke and everything else. Yeah, it does not look like because a lot of times you'll see stuff and you can pick out the miniature because the smoke doesn't look quite right. But that one, that's the kind of thing you only get one shot at. You get one shot, you better do it right, and you gotta give them credit for that.
yeah. Yeah, no, I dollars to donuts. That was a real, at least not a full castle, but the part of it that you saw was probably really real wood, real building that they took a match to. All right, Shadow, what did you think of the movie? Did you like it?
Well, I had to watch it twice because I fell asleep halfway through the first time. The the motivations and the story, behind the king's decisions and reactions and what have you were incomprehensible to me. I didn't get it. Um, there was very little that I liked about it. Obviously, the scenery, the sweeping, sort of battle scenes. Although I think they did go a little overboard with the arrows, the pin cushions dressed as men in armor was just. I wasn't sure if that was for comedic effect or not. It just seemed, I counted on one guy there was 20 arrows in him. I'm like, what did they? Someone ordered pincushion that guy, and he's just riddled with arrows. Even Boromir didn't take that many arrows.
And he had a shield.
What?
And he had a shield. If he
Right,
actually
and
used it.
the scenery, the costumes. Well, I'll get into the costumes later. For the most part, were pretty intense. I've never seen more comfortable looking pajamas in my whole life. Um, but I had a hard time understanding um, the story. It was just it, I guess the guy didn't know his own children very well, which is a shame. And it was confusing because it seemed like he had like a whole bunch of children, not just the three. Was I mistaken there?
No,
He
you
had
just go for it.
he had the three sons, and then what would happen is that he would every like king that he had killed, or a opposing ruler that he had killed, he would marry one of them off to his sons. So that's why
I guess there was something that led me to believe that a lot of the other men around the main three, like they were dressed in like gray from time to time, or really drab costumes as opposed to the other three bright colors, which again they were trying to highlight that these are the important characters and the other ones are people in the background. But I was wondering, I get that the scenery and all that was phenomenal, but the story was just really hard to follow and to understand or predict where they were going with it. Other than this is just a tragedy. Am I mistaken there?
Well, Connell, you've seen, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is that these were the lords that had helped him conquer in other areas, and then he had minor lords. So you see a lot of those, and so he expected everyone to have the loyalty. And then it was his third son, where the two, I guess his two generals is the best way of phrasing it, decided to go in there, and so that was
completely treat the old man like shit. I mean, what did they think was going to happen? I mean, wouldn't it have been better, if he just waited, wrote out a will and left it, for after his death? What did he think was going to happen? He's going to kind of step down, but not really step down. He wants all the perks, but none of the responsibility. You guys are now in charge, but I'm really in charge. Why bother then? Just be in charge.
When he took I guess his advisors and the three sons up to that beautiful hillside to say, I'm stepping down. My oldest is taking my place. The second child, you'll get the second best castle, and the third son, you'll get the third, best castle. But what I'm going to do is realistically is I'm going to step down, but I'm going to continue not having. Well, I think in his head, this is where he got mixed up. He thought he'd still have some power, in which he should have still had some power for who he was. But he was going to be that guy in the back room that whispers into his kid's ear as a advisor. And I'm thinking that's what he...
Why? I mean, was he diagnosed with cancer or something?
Just, he was old. He was getting up there. He had a bad dream of him dying. I mean, he was an older... I don't know how old he was supposed to be.
Over 70.
I know, he looked like a freaking lich.
He was over 70 was the point. And he was, he'd spent 50 years or so trying to conquer all the lands, and so now he was, and to be fair, it's no different than when you watch a lot of these people give their, the business to their children, and then the children all do. And I see it all the time, unfortunately, in real life, where he's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You get the recipe, you get this, you get that, with the expectation that the children will work together, and instead they all fight amongst each other, and the business tanks, and you're just like, what are you doing?
Right. I get that, but I mean, hey, what's up, nerd? He didn't seem, to understand that that was going to kind of happen, or that he should have maybe just left it all to one guy, because they were just going to fight and squabble over it, and stab each other in the back. Only to find out that the best son was the one he treated like shit. Yeah.
Well, the expectation.
How do you not know your own kid that well?
Well, that's true. Well, and let's be honest, a lot of parents are blinded by their children. They think they're better than they are. I've seen that happen a lot. Like, your child's not a little angel, okay? He beat up his girlfriend and stole the car and then wrecked it and then lit the house on fire. He's not an innocent child. You see that all the time on the news. My little baby. You're like, wait a minute, your little baby shot 4 people.
Yeah. Jack better not pull that kind of turnaround anytime while I'm still kicking.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand with some of it, but I thought it was very interesting at the beginning where the youngest son was specifically telling him this is a bad idea. You don't split your power among 3. And that was one. But, the expectation was, hey, look, here's your older brother. You support him and you guys will be stronger together this way by working, because your family, you can trust each other. And, the little spoiler here is it was the oldest wife that wanted the revenge on each of them and so turned the, poison the ear. If you notice that it was the youngest son that was the most decent and loyal, the one without a wife, oddly enough. The second son had a good wife, but it was but it was the first. It was that first wife that wanted revenge, and she's the one that was the little poisonous serpent in their ear. Well,
she was like the only interesting character in the movie. She had the only action scene, where she put the knife up to the dude's throat. What a psycho! Then she sleeps with the dude. I'm like, what the hell?
She calls him out for being weak. Notice that they had almost no backbone. They had very little backbone. And even the advisor of the second son, Kurgate, when he did the fox and he rolled it out, he says,
I love that scene. That was one of my favorite scenes.
He says, be careful. Oh, she must have turned into a fox and then turned into a statue. I mean, that is about as, how do I want to call it, insubordinate as you can get. Literally telling the guy, I'm not killing off your original wife. She was a decent lady. That I thought was really cool.
And then she ends up getting killed anyways.
Yeah, well, Kurgate's the one that chops off her head. I mean, well, I'm sorry, not that one. I'm sorry about the evil wife.
Yeah. I mean, while I was watching the movie, I'm kind of feeling sorry for the old man, but at the same time, I'm of the opinion he kind of made his own bed. But weirdly enough, who I felt sorry for was the blind guy in the shack.
The transgender?
Yeah. No. He wasn't the transgender. He was the one that they'd gouged out his eyes, and they asked him
that had been living like a woman, for all those years. I
don't think it's.
You guys apparently didn't notice the way he walked with his ass stuck out like Asian women do, the whole bit. Even when it was all revealed, and the way he talked.
Right. I get what you're saying. I'm saying I don't think it was. What's wordage I am the same way that transgender and all that's going on right now. I don't think it was applied that way. 10 to 1, he was put into hiding and told to act this way so no one would figure out who he was and to kill him.
I don't think anybody told him, and he didn't seem to have a problem continuing to be that way throughout the rest of the movie. I'm not saying, I'm just commenting on how that was apparently a thing, because I've seen that before in some anime as well. The character from Robotech, Lancer, I think it was. So apparently, it's not entirely a new construct, but to even put it in there was a weird choice for that era.
I think that for him, you're probably right. I didn't notice that, but you're right when you bring it up. When they call him a woman, he's like, I'm not a woman. And I think it was part of the thing is, he's exiled there. The question is who was taking care of him because he was completely abandoned.
I'm thinking it was his sister.
And all the way to the very end with that character being the final scene to just let you know that not one character in this movie, ends well. I mean, that character was literally standing on the ledge, going to wait until someone came? At some point, that person's going to fall off the cliff or crumple into a starved mess, on that cliff, balcony, whatever the heck that was. It was just like, wow, this is just awful. There's literally, nothing but, awfulness. The end.
Welcome to Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean that's a tragedy. I mean that's what it's supposed to be. Is there's none of the,
Yeah.
I mean,
Not a
look,
fan.
okay, going to Shakespeare. I mean, I know this was a Japanese film. I know this was a foreign film, but it was based off King Lear. So in my opinion, we have to talk about Shakespeare.
That's
Do
fine.
we-
Go for it, Connell.
With Shakespeare, the most common play that everybody knows is Romeo and Juliet,
Macbeth. And,
Macbeth, Hamlet,
yeah.
Merchant of Venice.
Merchant. None of these plays go well.
Merchant of Venice isn't that awful.
No, you're right. You're right. That's like one of the few. Other than there's a Comedy of Errors and Midsummer, Midnight, whatever that end well. But most of Shakespeare's plays that were meant to be serious, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, they all end bloody, and they all end bad.
Well, historically, whenever you look at tragedies, the Greeks would have like 3 tragedies for every comedy. And their version of comedy is not the way we think of comedy. It just means that it has a happy ending. That's the way the Greeks look at comedy. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at a lot of them, I forgot one of them was like with Oedipus and stuff. You always have it, with Jason, with Medea. There is no happy ending for the most part. That's what, and that's fine. I don't mind that. I just couldn't believe, who was the one decent character in the whole. There were a couple decent characters. There was Saburo, and then there was what's her name, Shui, the second wife.
The second wife was decent. The fool
Who got her head chopped off?
Yeah, because she went back to get his thing, and he's like, no, don't, no, it's okay. I'll get that, and yeah.
I know that was the fool a boy or a girl?
He was supposed to be a boy, but he was very effeminate.
Okay, because I'm
least favorite character. Every time that character was on screen, I wanted to turn the movie off.
I just didn't know because a lot of them had
No,
the
it was pretty
traditional
obvious.
haircut of that era, which was like to me is completely odd. But I'm not Japanese, therefore.
Right, no, it was just if for that kind of movie, with the way things were, I seriously have a hard time believing that they actually had a jester in type of persona in that era of Japan. That guy would literally never open his freaking mouth for fear of having his head chopped off, or literally the character was literally insane, and they had some sort of don't kill the crazy guy because the gods will get mad or something. It was just annoying.
But that was the point of a fool. You always had him, but he was at the lowest social class.
But he was the only one that could tell the king the truth, even if the king did not want to hear it without.
No, I get that, but my point was that I don't even picture feudal Japan ever allowing such a concept.
But I think that's a
Yeah.
misconception from our perspective, because we've been indoctrinated by, oh, well, they're like this. Even when you saw the stuff in Oriental Adventures and things, every film I've watched for it, it's always about betrayal. And if you actually look at the history, they're not nearly as noble as they pretend to be. I
get that. Yeah. I can't imagine the king or what have you tolerating that sort of insolence for 1 second. The first time he said something, he'd be strung up. Why would he allow that? Everybody on the planet feared him. There were scenes where there'd be 100 dudes already just pincushion him. We've seen you do it before, but they're just letting him walk. Everybody wanted him dead, but everybody was so terrified. That if 20 archers drew back, he'd slay them before they were done? No, obviously not. He just had this reputation, and let's face it, he did look like kind of a fuzzy lich.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think when he stepped out, everyone thought he was a ghost. Yeah, I mean, and he looked like that too.
He tried
to that effect, right? He's some sort of supernatural quality, but at the same time, he never
tried to cancel himself.
Sort of sign. Pardon?
He tried to cancel himself. He just didn't have any way to do it.
Yeah, he
Right.
broke his sword.
Well, real quick, I'm glad you mentioned that. For those of you out there who think that the katana is the end all be all of blades, shove it up your ass. Clearly, they broke just like anything else. They're no better. They may be a little better, maybe just a little in some respects against certain things. But when the King's Own blade snap, you know what I mean?
Here,
Seriously?
here's the problem: is we're looking at post Shogun Japan and thinking that's the way it was during the actual fighting, during the feudal Japan, because it's completely different when they did it. The samurai were I mean, if you look at one of them, he betrayed people. I mean, it's the idea of what we have in Japan is after the wars, after they'd already consolidated and everything became very static and solidified. And that's not the period that he's going for. And he's done that in a lot of his films. And let's be honest, for this, when you're in war, they just get a bunch of different swords out there. And like you said, is nothing's perfect. Everything breaks. Everyone that, if you actually look at most of the stuff that they talk about when using katanas, when we think about it, they're using against unarmored opponents that aren't in steel. It's very different
Right.
than
They're really not. They're not meant to cut through plate or chain or any of that. The materials they were cutting through were pretty
human
light, pretty
beings.
right. Even the stories of how they would test the sharpness of one by lining up prisoners and riding through with a horse and see how many heads they lopped off before it got dull. Well, the answer should be none, according to legends, but clearly that's just a bunch of superstitious nonsense when it comes to how great a blade they were. I think the fact is that they were a blade that was just a little bit better because of a new way of making them. If you look at traditional other blades, they're all crap. They're not meant. Steel's not meant to be an elongated blade, holding it at the one end and expecting it not to break at the freaking hilt at some point.
Well, the other thing
the way tools are.
I've heard this is the katanas of that time were just as good as the European counterparts. That the problem is that people look at, hundreds of years later when they went through all the ritualized aspect. It's just like today. Oh, they could make a really great modern blade nowadays. That's better. What was the what do they call it? The Ulthric? There's a Viking sword they talk about.
The F, yeah. But it was made of iron and
it's what we would consider mild steel, but it was stronger than what they had. That was more flexible too.
It was cast iron. It was made from cast iron. It was
Well, but I'm saying, but they knew blades like that, and they gave them mystical properties too. I think, just like everything else that we listen to, is a lot of it's mythology. One of the reasons I like this film is because they have firearms, and people forget just how prevalent they were in the latter part of the when they were unifying Japan in the Shogun era. When they were going through, Japan was the number one manufacturer of firearms. That's what based off the Dutch and the Portuguese. Everyone seems to think that Japan in 1800 was the same Japan that was in there in 1500, and it's not true. It's the whole thing of, oh well, you lose your head for this. That's one of the other things I liked about this film. You had betrayal. I like the fact that the two lords that opened up the castle. When they said, well, thank you very much for your service. Here's some money and be gone because we can't trust you. If you betray one lord, you'll betray another. I thought that was great. They show that, yes, there is, there is honor, but there's also a lot of backstabbing and treachery as well, which is not something that, again, that's portrayed in a lot of other areas. If you watch The Seven Samurai, again, this is one thing I liked about Akira Kurosawa is he didn't have this romanticized view of the era.
Probably because not only did he grow up in it, but he was able to, like us, we, great example of my pick's going to be a Western. And when we watch Westerns, we know even 1960s, 1970s Westerns, that shit might as well been mythology. It's not accurate remotely. The scenes where the lone gunfighter takes out 10 dudes before a shot goes off, that's freaking pure fantasy.
Or Hollywood six-shooter scenario.
Well, we all
Any
love
one
it,
of them,
but I mean, if you notice that some of the older films, it's one or two people, and now we're in the modern era. After the 1980s. Oh yeah, he goes around and shoots all of them. It just becomes more and more fantastical because what is it in? I mean, if we're going to talk a little bit for westerns, a little bit. So what was the with Rooster Cogburn, we fought 4 people. That was a big fight. Oh, he charged 4, he took them on, and that was a big deal. Nowadays, 4, they're like 4. That's it. Oh, come on, you can do better.
Right. One of the reasons I brought it up is that so many of what we call the great westerns were somehow linked with the Japanese samurai films and the era. They were stealing from each other back and forth, which is one of the reasons why I picked the movie that I did. That it's kind of interesting how similar those two styles and genres are when you break them down.
Well, Akira Kurosawa was a big fan. I guess he started making films in the 1950s of the Western in the United States. But he took a lot of the classic stuff that he did, and then they, Sergio Leone had to pay him for taking a few of his film. His film, and he says, "Yeah, it's a great film. Too bad I thought of it first." And Sergio Leone was like, "Oh yeah, here's some money to keep you quiet, so you don't sue me too much." But I'm okay with that. Is great be told in different time frames, and I think that's something that a lot of people forget about. I will say this much for battle scenes. Oh my God, and I know that Cheto's talking about the number of times they're hit with arrows. I also know a little bit different is when they were talking about the Crusaders. They talked about that with their gambesons. A lot of times they would be walking almost like pincushions because it didn't go in deep enough. Yeah, they got hit by the arrow. It stuck in the armor, but it didn't either go through or stuff. The other thing is, look at the number of arrows they were shooting. I mean, good grief. It was...
It just came across to me as a little comical. At what point do they go, okay, 19, 20, all right, good, we're good. If the guy had 6 arrows versus 17, we're gonna get we're gonna figure it out. He's dead because he got shot.
Well, Shadow, just remember, you keep shooting until they stop moving. When they stop moving, then you stop shooting.
I stop moving. I got hit with an arrow. I'm laying down. No.
Well, no. Most people. I mean, even if there's, what was that guy that got shot like 40 times in Florida? Did you ever hear about that? Where they
the guy who was like high on PCP.
Well, it was something like that.
Or angel dust. It was something. It was something like that.
Same thing.
Yeah. Drugs are bad.
Well, no, I mean, this was real life. The guy actually was shot, and they're like, well, it was a fatal wound. The problem was it wasn't instantly fatal, and so they kept shooting him until I think he took out 2 FBI agents or so. It's just interesting looking at it, but I understand where Shadow's coming from. With when do you stop? I said probably when he stops moving. It's like shoot him again. And the other part is, and I think a lot of people forget about this with the Japanese. In what was it, European, they tended to take prisoners. Whatever it is, and I don't know about the Chinese, but whatever it was with the Japanese is they killed all of the prisoners. There were no prisoners.
It was dishonor. It was one of those. You weren't taken as a prisoner. There was something else to it, but I know part of it was if you were a warrior and your team, your side lost, you would see. I don't know how accurate this is, but I've heard that you see lines and lines of people on their knees ready to cancel themselves because of honor. So I don't think taking prisoners.
I don't think it was a matter of honor so much as it was a matter of, you know, I don't want to be tortured for information.
Well, I mean, even
yes and no. I don't. I mean, yes and.
Well, even the opposing army would kill them, So I think it was, and this is where I think sometimes there's a big difference. Is Japan apparently had a huge labor surplus compared to Europe. So in Europe, it's like I don't want to kill all these people because I still need people to work, and then it was well known for ransoming. It's exactly the opposite in Japan, which was no, you just kill it. So I mean, whenever they got in the wars, either you ran away.
Not to mention, at what point are you gonna, have to deal with a slave revolt or an uprising or,
I mean,
your
how
guards
big?
being out
I mean,
overwhelmed and okay, sure, your guards, at the prison have, cool armor and weapons, but when 20 starving prisoners decide to take out so and so's grandson or cousin who's pulling guard duty, and they're going to get freaking whacked from the prisoners, why take that chance? Just freaking off them. Not to mention, they're a constant danger.
I know they also. I don't know at this juncture of time, but I know that head trophies were also a big thing where they would, if they got killed on the field, they'd go back and lop off its head to show their lord, saying, "Look who I killed!" This great and honorable samurai, soldier, whatever.
I just know that when I did some research, when I was playing Shogun Total War, they went through a lot of the history and things.
Yeah. The guy who should be in here talking to us about this stuff is this guy.
Yeah.
That's complete.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly the point I don't doubt it. It's a complex topic, but it depends on which era. And, when we're looking at the last 100 years or so before they unified Japan, people forget there were Christian samurai, there were Buddhist samurai. Christian samurai were.
But there were no female samurai. Get that right, guys.
But there was a black samurai.
I think there was. Yeah,
there was. Hey Kai, if you got the time, I'd love to have you jump in. You know about this era, the samurai aspect more than I do, and
But that was part of the thing I liked about this film was that it didn't romanticize the samurai, unlike what we see nowadays because when they start looking at everything of what happened in Japan from 1945. We get to see this culture. Yeah, you got to see a culture that was literally 300 years of no war, where everything was locked down. Everyone had their place. It was highly regimented. This was a time frame of chaos. That's one thing I liked about this. It's during the tumultuous times rather than and I don't remember all the time periods, but yeah. There's the pre and post, before they conquered, before all of Japan is unified versus before. But yeah, the battles were also huge compared to like European battles. The battles in Japan were much bigger. We talk about, the size of battles. If you actually look at most of the battles in Europe, they're like 10, 20,000 until you get into the, late Renaissance. There are a few that are larger ones, but most of the battles are not that big. And these would have like 100,000. That was just huge. But which also tells you that there was a large population surplus. And there was also what I want to say, there was social mobility during this time as well. If you could fight well, they could elevate you to a lord. Unlike later on where it's like, nope, your family is from the wrong era, you can't move up at all. And I do like the Shigu, the different, they had the horses, they had the I won't call them the spearmen. They had the musketeers. They had the archers. I like that overall.
All right, Kai. Well, I do understand that.
Yeah.
I think for picking a foreign movie, this was a great pick. There's a lot of meat on this, but I'm just trying to come up with think about the right way answers for this movie. I think let's go with the costumes and background. We could talk about that. I think that'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know who made those pajamas, but they sure look comfy.
You hear that? Shadow will take 2 of each.
Well, this is
As
where
long
we
as they're black, sure.
this is where we need Noro from
Max.
yeah. John Schmoes. We need his wife on here to tell us about all their things.
Yeah, this is one of those.
Well, but I think that's, but see, my mother went to Japan in the 1950s as a little girl. And so she remembers some of the things going on, both the basic poverty and, certain things like, no, this is this and this is that. But though the costumes are great, the armor is beautiful.
The armor is definitely nice to look at, but knowing what we know, I would rather have something else as armor. The helmets were kind of weird. More, less function, more form, I guess. More decoration than anything.
Well, I mean, everything is in there. I talked to one guy who studied it, and he said the Japanese really loved the body armor from Europe, especially the chest plate.
Yep.
Because, and this is the other part, is Japan is lacking a lot in iron, so they can't make the full suits nearly as easily as they could in Europe. Europe had these vast iron ore deposits, so they can make a lot of steel, whereas Japan did not. So they had a lighter armor for that.
Was it Mythbusters?
It was easier to make. I mean, don't get me wrong. They still managed to make things with technologies we would have probably never thought of. The weaving and the lacquer and in some cases what essentially would be like particle board armor.
Well, even when you look at the of course, we're going back and forth. Did you ever? I looked at the video that they had for what is it called? The armor that Alexander the Great wore, which was a cloth armor.
It was linen.
Yeah,
it was waxed. It was a linen wax built. But it was layered. It was linen wax, and it is
fish glue and some other things that layered it in between.
Right, and it was as strong as iron because
it wasn't as strong as iron, but it was like a quarter of the weight. It was much lighter, and then the other part is that it would stop arrows.
Well, I should say iron, but yeah, it was
right. Considering the weapons of the era, the weapons of the era, even today, a good leather jacket will stop most knives on the market. If it's zipped up, you know what I mean? It's just not going through. People don't have that kind of strength to push the blade through, a good quality leather jacket. That's why we still use that, and you don't see, bikers and other folks, riding around in chainmail, or Kevlar or things like that. It does its job remarkably well. I
had a few. Well, I knew, a veterinarian. She had, I think, the Kevlar inside of her leather jacket, kind of stuff, just to make sure. But it's not intended to stop anyone from attacking you. It's just their. Oh, okay. But it's it's intended that when you skid across the ground, at the end of the day, more protection's better when you.
Absolutely.
Yep. So there's that. But the mobility and everything else was in there. I like the fact that they had a huge number of horses when you look at it. I mean, just the sheer number. You look at the stuff nowadays, and it's all so close. It's not this great. When we were talking about some of these old films, cast of thousands. This had at least casts of hundreds, if not more, and all with the individual armor. They're all spread out. You get to see everything. It's
right. There was no faking it like they can do with medieval armor in some cases. Where the capes and the cloaks will cover it. There's no back armor, that sort of thing. But what's the deal with the flags on the back? That just drove me nuts. I know
The
it's
banners?
a thing, and I get it, but to me it seems like if you're trying to be freaking quick and maneuverable, having this freaking wind drag on you just seems to be, I don't know. It was kind of.
Oh God, the banners. They were called banners, and it was to let the generals, lieutenants knew what side.
I get all that. It just seemed like a weird way to do it. I mean, clearly everybody's wearing the equivalent of uniformic colors. Okay, we're the red guys, you're the blue guys. Do I need the flag too?
That's the question of. It's still pretty. I mean, if you ever look at the Winged Hussars, they had something similar on their.
Sure.
So
I suppose if you're doing so well, you can start adding hood ornaments to each of your troops. That's great. But I would rather focus on quality equipment as opposed to decorative embellishments.
Well, you know what though is looking at a lot of stuff is that was personalized, but I don't think that the banners were that way. I think it was just so the general could see where things were and how if all of a sudden you see that there's a lot less banners on one side than the other guy, you might go, well, they're outnumbered. Maybe I need to reinforce them, or that side's breaking down. I think that's what it was really, is just to tell the general visually from a distance on who's winning or how hard a side is going for there. Because we look at a lot of stuff as an individual, but man, when you start getting up into unit tactics and battles, a lot of that means a lot less. So like, well, this is a better weapon. It's a better weapon, but I can't supply you with it. Logistics matters more than quality of weapons. Can I fit, which is one of the reasons that, while they had better weapons in the Civil War, only a few units ever got them. And it's because, like, look, I can't have 50 different types of bullets. I can't supply everyone with them. So I think, and that was a big problem with the South, is the South, a lot of people brought their own weapons, whereas the North were supplied. So that's
right. And now our own military is going with the boneheaded idea of making their own elite freaking round that they will never be able to produce enough of.
I'm going to say this a little bit different about that, which is if you're going to talk about rifles and stuff, but for logistics, if the private sector has done more in firearms development in the last 20 years than was ever done in the military in the last 100. I mean, just for basic firearms. And then the military adopts it. It goes back and forth, but like the 50 cals, almost all the innovations in 50 cal has been from the private sector, and then it's adopted by the military.
Almost all one.
Yeah,
right.
Oh,
but
really?
the problem is that anybody who knows how the military works, it's going to go to the lowest bidder.
It's not the lowest bid. Well, I'm going to correct some of that because I do work for the government. I know how contracting works. It's two things: best value or lowest technically acceptable bidder. Those are two different things. And really, lowest bidder is okay as long as you have good specs.
Right, but with the way the current environment is in our notion of demilitarizing our own military, do you really want to sign up now?
I don't want to get too political about that part because I can go on and on about a lot of it. My mother worked with the Air Force in contracting. I've done some contracting myself, but at the end of the day, and this is true of anything, is the commander has to know what's going on, and if the commander doesn't know what's going on, that's where the banners come in. Is you can tell if I'm looking over to the left and I see, we'll use the orange and blue. If I see that there's 50 blue banners and there's like 10 orange banners, I'm like, I need to reinforce that over there, otherwise that side's going to collapse. And I think that's what the purpose was. It was not really, and you're right, it slows it down. But from a general perspective, I need to know what's going on the battlefield if I stand on a hill, and I need to know where to put everyone. And when
Invent the telescope.
What's that?
Invent the telescope.
Do you know how bad that stuff was back then?
Yes.
Well, even with a telescope, I don't want my general just looking over at one little section of the battle with it and doing this.
You get tunnel vision with that.
Yeah.
They need the banners. So if one side's orange and blue, and there's more orange over there in blue than in your blue, well, I need to fill that hole. So I'm going to have reinforcement go there. I get it. Now that I think about it, if
all of a sudden your infantry's over there and they're starting to collapse that side, you're like, let me send the cavalry over there to run those men down, and then they can get behind the lines. I mean, to me, it's a visual aspect from a commander's perspective, where you can sit on a hill very quickly, assess how the battle's going from that way. That's why I think it was done.
I'm trying to think of a good example.
No, I get that. I get that. It just seems, I don't know.
From an individual, it would suck. I'm not going to lie. You mean I got to carry this stupid thing on my back?
Yeah, but how much of a lifeline? I mean, honestly, if your commander, if you're living in feudal Japan, and your lord telling you we're about ready to declare war on another side, how long are you going to actually expecting to live? I'm going
to bring up the Civil War. When I was talking about the standards,
right?
It's the thing. It's just where's the flag? Don't let the flag drop. Pick the flag up. Capture the enemy's flag. I mean, it's something. That's all I look at it as, and that's always the position. Is it?
That's always been a thing. It just seems highly
inefficient.
Well, yeah. Just the guys, they need to, they need to be able to move and move fast, and what have you. I would just think that they could have gone a different route.
As Omen Al said, there was a surplus of men there. It wasn't. They didn't have to worry. The body count wasn't a problem.
Yeah, for the most part. Oh, I think the other part is if you notice, not all of them had the banners. It was only a number in there. But the other part
I didn't really notice. I noticed more of the opposite. It was, to me, it seemed
sure. Well, I agree with you, but I looked in there.
There were a crap ton of them. I mean,
several of the infantrymen.
Just a crap ton.
Several of the infantrymen did not have it. I don't know what the percentage was, but the other part, of course, is just like being a standard bearer color, for the colors. That's also an honor. So you're like, yeah, it sucks to have it, but if I'm carrying it, I'm a more honorable soldier. So it's probably also used to convey some of that aspect too. It's just like it's just like peacock.
Yeah, I'd rather be alive than given that distinction.
Well,
it also makes
now,
you a huge
that
target.
was then, and none of us are generals in a massive battle with samurai.
Well, I'm going to read this other part. We're also not 20 and dumb. That's the other part. It's like, oh yeah, it's just like whenever I hear these people like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm like, you're not fighting for this reason. You think you are, but trust me, you're not. I've been seen enough in there. It's like, you're not fighting for the reason you think you are.
Yeah, they never are.
No, and that's that's the problem of when you start getting older. Is you start becoming a lot more jaded. Like, I'm getting rid of this. I'm getting rid of this. And we're trying to think of it as individuals. I understand it from a unit perspective. Okay, what are we going to do? We simplified, but what can I do and the general doesn't really care. So you get tired more. I mean, why they have buttons on sleeves is because
the people were using their sleeves as napkins.
Well, they were using it to wipe their brow, and Napoleon didn't like that. I'm like, really? You're in the middle of a fight trying to do this, and he's worried about you using your sleeves. So, and Patton used to run around and scream if people didn't have their helmets on when they weren't in, even in the bathroom. There's some weird things that go on when you have that. It's like, okay. It's like, all right, I understand you're trying to enforce.
Yeah, how would anybody know what you're doing in the freaking in the can. You know what I mean?
Because if you've ever been in the old military, you just walk in and there'd be like 50 toilets all in a line with no dividers. It wasn't that hard.
I hear Jackie in the background, but
but no, I'm being honest. Is I remember using those when I was we went to a ROTC camp when I was 14, and it was the old World War II style, and I mean, there's just a line of toilets, and there is no privacy.
like at any sporting event, any bar, yeah.
No.
Again,
Remove the dividers. Now that's what it's like.
there's I can't tell you how
There
many
was a
freaking concerts or sporting events I've been at, and it's just a freaking basically a trough.
Yeah.
no, especially no. When I was in high school, the toilet we had like 5 or 6 toilets in the guys' locker room, and there was a divider, but it only went up so high where if you could walk past it, you could see what everybody was doing.
Well, the divider was like at the waist kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like
But anyway, that's the point. Is we're looking at it from being being old and grizzled and cynical versus that time period where honor meant everything. Most people didn't survive, and if you did survive, that's how you could get a wife, is if you did well. And so you peacock around and like, okay, I can get women this way, and her father won't chase me off.
I don't know. I blame. I could jokingly say you could blame the father. Well, not even jokingly, you could blame the father for majority of the hiccup that was this movie. Him doing that. The youngest son had the right of it.
Well, not only that, his youngest son actually cared about his father. When they're talking about it, when he cut down the tree to leave him in shade. I mean, there's just little tiny things in there that go through it.
Right. And how do you not see that? Growing up, watching your children grow, how do you not notice those things? You know what I mean?
Because
I'm sure the father did not know what kind of poison that his daughter-in-law was spilling into his son's ear over the years.
Oh yeah. Well, they all admitted that. They all admitted she was the power behind the throne. I mean, was it Jiro? Which one was the second one? Was it Jiro? Anyway, I can't remember.
Toro? No, Toro was the first one. But yeah. Anyways.
Well, Jiro was talking about.
I couldn't be bothered with the names. I knew early on I was going to forget them.
Well, late. What her name was? But the first wife. They all mentioned that she was They all knew about her and what she was doing, and that's without her, everything would have been fine. But let's be honest. The first son was kind of wishy-washy. The second son was very ambitious and wanted the kingdom, and the third son was the only one that actually cared about his father. That was
it's always the middle child, right?
I'm the oldest, and I've never been all that
Marsha.
Yeah.
Right.
What was I going to say? I wasn't thinking. The last big battle at the end of the movie, where you had the brother versus brother, then you got 2 separate armies on the side. It's like, okay, we're going to jump in if one of them steps out of line.
I thought, and it was just 2 advisors that were the ones that put up there. That's what I thought was interesting. They were there, and I don't know exactly what I just thought it was interesting when they said you can't allow your father to get this because then it allows them to, when they said, where are the peasants? Why can't we get food? They ran away, sir. Because they didn't want to have to make a choice. They didn't want to be disloyal to the old ruler, but they didn't want to deal with wrath with his son. I thought
the only one that had the right of it was the advisor that ran off with the youngest son.
Yes.
He was the only one that was worth listening. Well, that's not true. The second one's guy who presented that fox head, he was worth listening to.
The jester was worth listening to.
This was just
the problem was that and I've seen this amongst old men. I can't be told anything. You know, they get really mad. They disown. You know, I've seen stupid things like that as well. I know from a rational standpoint, you go, this is stupid. You should be doing this. I have seen so many family fights of the stupidest crap. You know, exactly stuff like this is, well, you know, anyone remember watching a little bit different film, but what was it called? Was it Avalon or something? Where they fight over the turkey, you know, where the uncle keeps coming in late every day, and finally they get fed up one year and they let the kids eat, and then they say, well, you had to do this. And all I could do, you're late. But no, I like that. I couldn't believe on just Kurragane, which is, if we're gonna talk about favorite characters, it was Kurragane was one of my favorites.
Okay, yeah, I can get along with that. Shadow, did you have a favorite character?
Yeah, the psycho wife. She's the only one who's actually interesting. She's the only one who was interesting, had actually any freaking balls. It was the only actual fight scene, so to speak, with any, you know, freaking action and you know, excitement to it. I was not expecting that. I was like, oh my god, this movie's getting good, and then the next thing you know, she's sleeping with the dude. I'm like, what?
Well,
Sorry, I don't even have my camera on. Hold on.
That's fine.
What the did I just see? You know what I mean? She was just like,
oh no,
incredibly
she goes
driven.
okay, you killed my husband. To hey, we're gonna shag. To well, now I need you to kill your wife because I can be the only woman with you.
Right. What a freaking psycho. But at least she was interesting. An interesting psycho, I guess.
That was a Jerry Springer show. Well, that was like 30. That was like a minute long Jerry Springer show.
Oh yeah. Well, I liked Kurragane, which was the one that he was both insubordinate and loyal. You know, when he's talking about the things that you should do, you know, when he says, well, you can just leave. He says, where would I go? You know, no one would have me. But I thought that was interesting was when he goes over and says, your brother appears to be shot accidentally by a musket. And then he has the musket in his hand and he throws it down. I thought that was hilarious. You know, his brother, that second brother was a big backstabbing bastard anyway, just waiting for his moment to come in. And you know, I thought that was bad. I thought that was.
Do I actually?
I liked him because he's also the one that he did the fox head, and then he's the one that cut off Lady Cade's head.
I think I like the actor more than I like the character he played. I think that's my hang up.
Which one?
The father.
Okay, yes.
The father, the actor who played his father is a classically trained Shakespearean actor. If you go through his movies that he's done in the past, he's done 4 or 5 different Shakespeare plays. He knew his assignment. But for characters, I kind of dig the younger son.
Yeah, well, I like the youngest son. I like
the youngest son. Actually, was the only one worth, in my opinion, giving any of the kingdoms to.
Yes.
Well, that was the whole point. You know, kind of like similar to the Merchant of Venice, where you know it was the one that everybody discounted that was actually, you know, worth a crap.
Right.
Oh, the other part is, you know, from a lineage standpoint, the youngest son was not going to get anything regardless. And so I thought that was interesting. But I like the fact that, was it Taro? Who was the one that got banished with the son as well?
I can't think of his name or probably pronounce it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
You know, but you know, that was good. But I liked Kurragane. Kurragane was the one that was kind of, he was loyal to his lord, but he also would go, you know, I like this. Well, what do we do now? We die. You know, it was you know, at the end with the battle.
The last Starfinder, Captain. What do we do? We die. Yeah, no, I know.
Well, you know that's all probably taken from Rand anyway. They probably, you know, everyone watches these films and goes, "Yes, we have to put this scene in also."
Oh my god, I don't know.
Okay.
When did the last Starfighter come out?
Oh, but
86.
where does the freaking title originate? What Why is it called Ran?
Because apparently Ran in Japanese means like rebellion, revolt, or something like that.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, it made absolutely no sense to me what the title was.
I think what they did is they just did a transliteration rather than an actual direct meaning for it.
Gotcha.
Because I looked it up, and I know you didn't like the, I thought was interesting. Speaking of, I know you didn't like the character. It was the jester. I thought the jester was, that whole point of where I thought that the Lord was going to kill him a couple of times, but when he brought out the arrow and shot down
had the actor spoken differently, had the actor showed like the slightest sign of actual testosterone whatsoever, I think it wouldn't have been so bad. I've seen jesters before, and they're not always this weaselly, slimy little, creature.
Well, I don't think he was, to be honest. I didn't view him. He stayed loyal to the Lord the entire time.
No, I get that, but I mean, in previous other gestures, this one was just too soft. I'm just gonna put it there.
But I think that was the point. Is if he had any testosterone, then he would have. Then it would have been considered an affront. But because he was kind of the what we call lady man or whatever they are, kind of that feeling. It's like, look, no one respects you, so you can actually say something to the Lord, and people and that's the point of the gestures. You still have to be low enough that you can say the truth without it being seen as a usurping the power.
Right, but why even tolerate the presence of such an individual when you're walking around with a katana all day long?
Because
he's humble.
Well, that was the
original idea.
He's the one that's allowed to say something that he's the only one really allowed to tell the truth. That was the whole point of it. Is everyone else has to be very careful about hurting the feelings. In the meantime, the fool's the one doing it. And, that's. But I thought it was interesting when they were talking about at the very beginning where he talks about when he talks about the gourd in the wind. Really referring to the fact that the oldest son didn't have a backbone. He could be swayed one way or the other. His wife could turn his ear, or the father could turn. Whichever person he listened to last is the direction he's going to go. And I thought that was where But I thought it was still interesting where the old Lord pulled up the bow.
If I'm going to be listening to somebody, for wisdom, for insight. I'm not going to take it from someone who, has gone out of their way to be the least responsible, self-sufficient, rugged individual.
But Shadow, you're trying to look at this again. We're looking at Americans with we're not worried as much about status, but feudal status means everything to these people. So. The old people.
It does seem to mean quite a bit here as well, though.
Yeah. Well, that's
especially not personally, but if you've tried dating in the last decade, that's all there is anymore.
Well, wait, but I'm saying, I was listening to a book called Status Anxiety, talking about all the things. It's just like all these people that are, agreeing with whatever the, little political here. When Tucker Carlson's talking about Nikki Haley. And how she cares what the New York Times thinks, not about what the voters think. It's because they want the status among certain groups. You're like, who the hell cares? Why would you ever listen to it? It's because they think that that's the way to go for their own status. And they're like, well, I don't understand why no one, listens to them. Yeah, because you guys are scumbags. You listen to a small little group that has done nothing of value. Being Americans, I think this is a big difference too. Is I never understood the idea of why these people kiss up to kings and royalty. I'm like, why would I ever go kiss up to anyone that has a bad jaw, massive inbreeding, and obviously doesn't have a brain cell in their head, i.e., King Charles?
Well, okay. Look at it this way. So
Yeah.
you have a job, right? And
Yeah.
the boss is about ready to retire, and you've been, the boss's right hand for years. You know where all the bodies are buried, and you think to
That's why
yourself, well,
you network and you look for other companies that
well,
would like
hear me
someone
out.
with
Hear me
all of
out
your
here.
information.
Networking is still somewhat of a new thing. I still I'm talking. Okay, so you work for his company and you're the guy's right hand. He's leaving the business to his son, who everybody but him knows the kid's an idiot. He's going to run this business to the ground, but the only way to keep it afloat or keep your the money that you're counting on to live is now to kiss up to the son. Me, you, and Home and Al might not do it.
I would let my former boss know that such and such company and such company and such company would absolutely love to hire me.
Okay, but you're in a company where there is no competition. Remember, that's what it is with kingdoms. With kingdoms, there is no competition. Either you work for that
Well,
company.
there is and there isn't.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
it's
always.
amazing how paranoid people at the top are.
I know.
It's lonely. It's lonely to be king. Heavy, heavy is the crown that I wear.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, is there any scene? Oh God, this is gonna be a loaded question, especially with Shadow. Is there any scenes other than the entire movie you would take out, Shadow?
Pardon?
Is there like a scene of the movie that you don't think was needed that you could just like chuck out?
Yeah, any scene with the gesture, if not all the scenes with the gesture.
But see, I think that the gesture is important. Is he's basically the audience trying to tell the king, this is stupid. That's the point of the gesture.
No, I get that, but I would have hired somebody else to do it. He just made me freaking want to punch the screen.
I mean,
And it came for you got what you deserved. I mean, your source of wisdom is coming from someone who probably couldn't freaking start a fire, let alone cook a meal.
Just because he was soft like a woman doesn't mean that he didn't change the bedpan.
don't think Japanese women weren't badasses in their own way back then. Jesus.
Well, I mean,
No,
the whole thing.
I saw just how badass they can be, when they're sufficiently motivated.
That one just happened to be batshit fucking crazy.
And if you haven't, kept up with current, trends, Japanese women are they're running just about everything over there. So, it's going to be sad to see the country disappear because they gave up their chance of families for climbing the corporate ladder, and then there will be no corporate ladder because there will be no children.
They're only following the American dream from the 80s.
I'm going to say as much as a lot of it is all of Western Europe and the United States is generally like that, except for immigration. But that said, is they still keep their culture. Anyway, the whole point is they had their role, but did you notice on how everyone deferred to the lady when she walked in? That's what people forget. I saw this in Iraq myself.
I'll be right back, guys. Hold on. Continue.
I saw this in Iraq myself, and a lot of people forget about this. The women take the status of the men that they're married to, and I saw there was one lady, she was there, super nice, treat me really well, but they called her the madam, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to go see the madam," and she ran that thing with an iron fist. It was, she went over there. Would you like some tea? I'm like, I don't really like tea or coffee. I said, but I really do appreciate it. I think I took some tea, but then I brought her a little thing of Mexican chocolate because Mexican chocolate's the best chocolate. I don't care what anyone says. Anyway,
where do you buy this Mexican chocolate? Because every piece of Mexican chocolate I've ever put in my mouth, I've immediately spat back out.
Oh, I like Mexican chocolate because it has the cinnamon and all the other stuff. It's kind of gritty. It's the semi.
Yeah.
I don't like milk chocolate. I really don't like dark chocolate that much. That's why I like Mexican chocolate. I don't like chocolate for the most part. It's okay. It's a little bit of a flavoring. But there's people who love chocolate. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, see, I'm one of those guys. If I don't have actual chocolate every day, I'm slumming it.
But see, I like cinnamon. To me, cinnamon. So when you start adding cinnamon to chocolate, it makes it more tolerable.
Where the fuck did this conversation go?
Oh,
I don't add cinnamon to almost anything.
Actually, I was referring to.
If they could take it out of the cinnamon rolls, I'd be a happy camper.
Actually, see, I love cinnamon. Cinnamon's my favorite spice. But along with pepper, but not together.
That's a bit much.
Actually, that's not true. I did have some stuff from Bangladesh where they used cinnamon with no sugar, and it made it really spicy and hot rather than anything else. But not going there. What I was referring to is when I was in Iraq, there was a lady they called the Madam, and she ran the
house.
She ran the manufacturing facility, and so they're like, I said, well, who do I need to talk to? They're like, oh, you want to talk to the Madam? I'm like, where is she? Like, she's over there. She was like the only woman, amongst like 400 guys. And it was like, oh, and it was like, you have to, and she was real nice. She would greet you. She would hand you some tea or coffee. And that's where it came in. I didn't like it, but I gave her some Mexican chocolate, and that went over pretty well. I said, well, you know what? I appreciate the offer. I don't like coffee. I drink a little bit of tea or whatever. I said, but here, have some of, then I went back to the base, and I came back with some little tablets of Mexican chocolate. And so anyway.
Okay. I'm just curious. My daughter's on the phone was asking me if I'm coming over tonight for dinner. And I'm like, yeah. I'm doing my show. Let me get off. I come back to, I like chocolate. I'm like, wait, Japan doesn't have chocolate. Chocolate didn't come out of Japan. What the fuck?
Well, you got to know by now, if you're doing a live stream, it will inevitably devolve into a discussion of food. That is just the unwritten reality of all live streams.
Yeah. Especially this one.
Yeah. I was about to say, I can't say how many times me and Omen now have, especially when I'm just doing a random chat, end up talking about food in the beginning, the middle, and the end. Overall, okay.
I'm going to say as much as I thought the film was well done. I liked it. I know that Shadow in certain cases doesn't like, some of these, but from a game perspective, this is one of those I would say is a must see if you're ever going to run a game in like feudal type Japan.
Oh yeah.
Because,
I'm pretty sure if I can get Kai to have the time, he could give us all a lecture on the qualities of this movie in RPG.
Yeah, it was about a year or two after the whole release of the Oriental Adventures and that whole, ninjas every freaking where phenomenon most of us went through. I'm like, done, over it, cool. I don't understand the people that, obsess over other cultures like that.
I think
different. Something different.
America first.
Like,
sorry, guys.
I'm a human, and I want to play an elf. Why? Because it's not human. I want to be a dwarf, but why?
I want to play an elf because they're freaking immortal and better than everybody at everything they do, other than being grouchy, drunk, and fat.
Hey. They don't have souls. Elves don't have souls.
What?
That's according to one company and one way of thinking.
No, that was Tolkien. That was the whole point.
Elves have
I don't
blonde hair
remember
and
him
blue eyes.
creating the word elf. So, if in your world you don't want them to have souls, I would ask, why not?
Because Tolkien doesn't give them souls. They're tied to the planet. That's why.
I think that was kind of a Christian thing more than anything else.
The only
Because
creatures
otherwise
on
I
Earth,
don't get it.
the only creatures on Middle Earth that would actually have souls would have been the humans. Yeah.
Humans were the ones that had it, and that's why when they, when Numenor wanted to go over to the, the West, that's why they weren't allowed there. But humans were the only ones that could transcend Middle Earth. That was the whole point of what he was talking about. But that's.
I keep forgetting that he was Catholic. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's entirely it. And to me personally, I can't picture an intelligent life form that can, speak and communicate and build things and worship, etc. Not having one. But then again, there was no
Worshipping is a key
religion.
word.
There was no religion in Tolkien whatsoever.
Right.
It was completely devoid of it. If you want to go that route, cool. Then you don't get clerics and you don't get druids in your world, or maybe you want to do the new agey kind of druid. Fine, that's your prerogative. But if you're going to have living creatures that communicate and build and farm and have families and write books, then they have souls. And I can't see a single argument against that. Otherwise, you'd be able to use the same argument against certain races of humans for whatever example you would give for elves and dwarves not having souls. I could point at large groups and swaths of humanity that would also be soulless.
1930 something to 1940 something Germany.
Not pointing any fingers yet, but I could.
The only people that don't have souls generally have flew on Lolita Express to a certain island.
Right, or gingers. I think we can all agree on the gingers.
I don't know. I think they have souls. They're just no.
No, but I agree with the first statement there, Omen. Although it's interesting, in some of the circles that I run with, there's more and more talk of this NPC thing where they believe the world is like the Matrix, and there are genuine non-player characters out there, people you might bump into or walk past that are just more or less holograms that we don't pay attention to. They literally don't have souls. Personally, I find that to be a little much.
Well, I just look at there are demons, but let's be honest. In the classic Christian view, there are souls, but that means you can be saved in damnation. Those are the two things that are in there. If you don't have a soul, you can't be damned. Which is the other aspect.
So yet another reason to play elves, folks.
That's right. Well, my view on that is I go with that they're more of the. Sorry, we're completely going through it. Did anyone notice when he talked about? I mentioned the scene before. Was the the kitsune that he refers to?
Oh, the fox.
Yeah.
Fox bird, yeah.
That's.
Which is interesting because you guys know I'm a huge Shadows of Brimstone fan, and they do have an entire mirrored game called Forbidden Fortress, which is set in feudal Japan, and one of the characters you could run is one of those fox people, and I've yet to actually get that expansion, but that does look at least amusing to play that sort of.
What was it? Forbidden Fortress. It just sounds similar to one of the movies that Kurosawa may have done.
And considering how much it's influenced that part of the game with samurai and ninja and the mystics and the monks and all the crazy stuff that the characters could do, the onai and all of the Japanese and what have you, mythological creatures that are in the game. I would not be surprised if that was in fact where it got its inspiration. I haven't watched enough movies like that to get it. I've read my bare minimums, The Art of War, and a few other things. It just after a while it just sort of seemed weird to be that into someone else's culture when your own is being torn apart at the seams.
I'm going to bring this one. Well, most people I saw that did that is, they adopt. It was like, oh, this is so cool. It's different. It's unique. It's which is fine. It's how do I want to put this? Sometimes I enjoyed more going over to Asia than I did to Europe, because Europe was just America light, and it felt too similar.
Hey,
Yeah.
my past dating history will attest to the fact that I am no stranger over there, but that's about as far as it went. In the long run, and it really takes an incredibly open mind to flourish in places like that. Obviously, that's why I'm stuck here.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because my background, my childhood. Well, my grandma was Romanian. Romanian is not exactly Western. It's kind of its own thing. And accepting going full board into somebody else's culture and letting it absorb you and you losing your own self is horrible. I disagree with that immensely. But going somewhere where you go to visit and learn about somebody's culture, but keeping your own identity, I think that's the trick. I think that's what's important because you learn more about yourself through other people than you do by looking at yourself in a mirror. When I say a mirror, as your neighbors, your family, the people you work with. I'm talking about people who don't know you.
If that's your calling, then absolutely. There's very little that's awful about that sort of thing. But for me, my calling is right here.
And to each their own. At the end of the day, to each their own.
I've
I
never,
will never judge anybody who thinks that the border of their world is their hometown. I think they're idiots. I think you should go out and see the world. But if the border of your world is ends at the border of your hometown, and you have a happy life, you have a happy family, you're a good person, who am I to judge? But for people who want to see the world, who want to try new things, to build onto themselves, I think they should not be demarketized. I don't know what the right word there is.
Marginalized.
Yeah. In this movie, us doing a foreign, going back to this movie, us doing a foreign month is really cool. And because, granted, I know you guys probably didn't. Well, I know Omen, you like the one I picked, and I love I absolutely do not ever want to watch it again. But the Battle Wizard and the fucking chicken legs have given me so many ideas for it. So many ideas.
It was an experience I
it would,
won't soon forget,
And
but
the other thing
I
about
won't ever feel nostalgic for watching it again.
oh man, as soon I have a shipping address for you. As soon as I find some Go Gadget turkey chicken legs, I'm sending them to Jack.
uh,
Even if I have to get these things custom made. Uh but it's like food. Some of the best food out there was brought to America. America has very little food that was made here. Hot dogs come from overseas. Hamburgers come from overseas. American pie comes
Tacos.
from
Come on.
overseas. Tacos.
well, I'm going to bring this up. As we're talking about this, I mean, that's not exactly that fair because if you look at a lot of stuff, is like pizza. The pizza we're here in the U.S. is different than the pizza in Italy. My mother talked about in the 1980s.
Somebody told me the pizza we eat here is more to the what came from Mexico. I've never known if that was true or not.
I can't think of any reason why that would be valid.
Got crispy tacos. What is say crispy tacos in Spanish? You can't. Anyway,
Dorado. It's hard.
yeah. But no, it's funny because my friend he's Panamanian. Well, his mother's Panamanian. He's like, there is no word for crispy tacos. He just like would go, it's
I don't know about crispy tacos.
There's no word for Hulk in Spanish either, and I do not mean the big green guy, but the word Hulk does actually not exist in Spanish. So
there's very few words that are transcendental enough that they pop up in everybody's vocabulary. Papa, mama, mother, father, some variation of those are almost.
I'm gonna bring this much as we can talk about.
Word in any language.
Well, part of this, when you talked about it is, for adventures. If you're going to be running anything that's feudal Japan-esque, Ran is a great way to start. The Seven Samurai is smaller to look at. I think that some of it is if you're going to get literature, you're going to go through this. I think that you should understand what's going on there. It's just like whenever watching the American versions of the Middle Ages versus the Hollywood versions of the Middle Ages versus the grittiness that you'll see over from Europe, and how, it's interesting. Same thing for the spaghetti westerns. Look at the spaghetti westerns that was there, with Sergio Leone, which was a much grittier version than the idealized version that we were used to growing up in the Americans before then. I think that's part of why I say you look at foreign films, just be glad that we didn't watch Das Boot. I think Das Boot is a fantastic film. It's just 3.5, 4 hours long.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, it has to deal with the German U-boat and how it's a great film. I highly recommend people watch it, but that's not one that I would say, okay, guys, let's go watch this film for this. Now, if we're going to be playing a spaceship or something like that, where you're going to be doing it, then I think Das Boot would be great. But mostly we talk about fantasy, and sometimes we talk about sci-fi, but very rarely you're going to go over and say, okay, you're now underwater, you're doing this, your batteries are running out, you're under deep pressure, you're getting depth charged. How do you get everything running before you run out of air? You get fire. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. But part of it was, I think the idea also was to make sure that Jack would get to see films. So I was trying to pick films that Jack could get to really broaden his view whenever you're gaming. I would really get mad if all I see from people are the idealized version of samurai that were presented in Oriental Adventures. Like, no, they're a lot more complicated. Go look at the Japanese films also out there. And so you get a good view of not just the romanticized version of the American romanticized version of what it was like, which is what we do a lot of times, I think.
That's why I like the fact that we, for the most part, actually tend to watch really old movies.
Oh yeah,
If you're going to study, movies, I think just like you're studying history, you kind of need to start at the beginning. Not saying that we should do nothing with black and white films, but I think it gives you more perspective, and you can see, I think most of us will agree some of the best movies are some of the oldest movies.
Well, I think the other part is, just to be fair on this, is we have nearly 100 years in film of talking films. I guess I'm not sure when they started doing the talking, maybe, I think it was the 1920s or so. And you look at the newer stuff. Why do you want to look at the newer stuff when you have let's say that if we only look at movies that are 20 years old or older in the most cases, which is what we do. I mean, sometimes we look at newer stuff, but those films have lasted for 30 years of different generations and different people looking at stuff. And we don't necessarily have the nostalgia, glasses on there. Like, okay, this is cool. Let's go see how it works out. There are too many films that were out there that I enjoyed at the moment, and then a year or two later, I went, man, this was really bad.
Yep.
Perfect example.
I honestly can't think of a movie that's less than 15 years old that I'm like, this was a great movie. There's so very few of them that. Yeah. I can't think of but one or two movies that I saw in the theaters in Jackie's lifetime that I'm like, this was awesome.
Lego Batman.
I'll be honest. That's never going to stop being funny and odd. But I think that's why we love you, because you pull out these movies, these highbrow movies, and then you hit us with Lego Batman.
Lego Batman is probably the best film I've seen in the last at least 5 or 6 years. Just because it's hilarious. It is exactly what you expect. It's nothing. Well, it's what you expect, and then it has all the twist in there of going through it. Like, okay, but it's good natured. That's one. It's a film that I enjoyed a lot more than I thought I would. I mean, I enjoyed the first Lego film, But man, the Lego Batman
That
just
was not, that was not bad, but I wouldn't call it great.
no.
I enjoyed that movie. The first Lego movie with Jackie. Mind you, I was a dad who was constantly shelling out for Legos for my son, and I you know, those father and son kind of movies always get me, always will. You know,
well,
Pan
but
with
Lego
Robin
Batman.
Williams, another great dad movie.
Lego Batman's better than the original Lego movie, I think. It's funny. It's funny in the right places. It's ridiculous for the whole thing. You know, but that's what I said is that was one of the best films I saw. You know, yeah, okay, look, I like John Wick. That's fine, but when you start doing the sequels, I'm like, there's no plot. They have like the thinnest plot just to put some action into it. And I said, okay, I can't deal with that. But some of it is I just haven't had time to go look at it. I'll wait till it gets on the you know, the movie theater, you know, whenever it gets on the you know, HBO or whatever, like, oh, or Amazon Prime. Okay, I'll watch it then. But let's be honest, like we talked about with Train to Busan, some of it is that there's enough buzz about it years later that it's still worth watching. You know, that's what I think comes down to it is it's very easy to get people excited about the moment right now. But if you ask people like, what's a great film? And they go back, they'll usually start mentioning stuff that's 5 or 10 years old. And then you know that that's a film that still had an impact on their life in some way, shape, or form. I still need to see, but I think that's part of what goes out there. And while we're looking at this, it's like, all right, nostalgia. Ran wasn't really a big thing for nostalgia for me. I remember watching it, but I remember watching Seven Samurai, a lot of the old films that were Japanese, which were kind of interesting. And it was just different, especially when Oriental Adventures came out. I had become so burned out on the basic D&D that and it's like, oh, this is so cool. They get to do this, they get to do that. And of course, that was the era where everyone was doing super martial arts. And yeah, you know, that's I said, okay. And now in retrospect, learning more about it, and I've taken Aikido and I've taken some of the other stuff. The strikes are the same, the defenses are the same, the disarms are the same as what they did in the Middle Ages. It's just, how do I want to put this? We don't have a culture that's kept the martial arts in the West up like they did in Japan or the you know, in the other areas. You know, people forget when they talk about kung fu. The point of kung fu was to keep people in shape because they got too fat and they couldn't do the basic praying to the god Buddha. That's why they got the Shaolin monks to do martial arts, is that would keep them in shape so they could actually be in shape to do the proper praying, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I took Aikido, which was, and people forget, Aikido is intended to be actually used if you're in armor. That's why they don't have strikes. You don't hit someone in hard plate with your fist. You know, it's dumb. So of course it's more of a soft. You grab, you throw. You know.
You know what movie I think holds up for my childhood, and I'll still watch all the damn time when I get a chance to, is the original 1990 whatever it came out, 1995, maybe Ninja Turtles.
89.
89.
Maybe.
The live action Ninja
Corey
Turtles.
Feldman?
No, he was in a sequel, but the original one.
No, but with the red
he was
hair.
one of the voices in the original.
Oh, okay.
Was he really?
Yeah.
I know he was a voice in the second and third one. I didn't know he was a voice in the first one.
When we had a Comic-Con, one of the guys, he usually comes out here. He was one of the original Ninja Turtles. You know, and they talk about him, and you know, he talks about how martial arts were important in his life. You know, but I'm trying to think if I was trying to do another, you know, battle film, you know, grand war film. You've got what, Spartacus? I'm trying to think of what some other ones are that are out there.
If you could take out Tom Cruise, if you could remove him from the movie or replace him with a different actor, I'm going to say for the style, what we kind of watch, granted it was Americanized, I'm not going to say it wasn't,
Yeah.
was Last Samurai.
I saw the
last battle scene.
You know what? I'm actually going to give Tom a pass on that one. I think, you know, he wasn't at all what I expected. I actually watched that movie and I'm like, wow, this is the first Tom Cruise movie that I actually liked.
I like The Edge Beyond Tomorrow or whatever it was. The Edge of
So
Tomorrow.
yeah, when he keeps it was basically Groundhog's Day but violent.
Yeah,
Uh
I thought that was
Never saw
pretty good. Oh, it's a great film. It's hilarious and
but
parts
the
of it, but
last
it's
Sam, the
but
last
it's a sci-fi film.
yeah.
That's really cool where they're fighting off aliens, and he just happens to survive just long enough that he gets sprayed with some blood. But he keeps waking up every morning, going through the same battle, and when he first goes out, he doesn't know anything, and then because he gets better and better, he can go further and further along, which I think is kind of cool for the whole film. It's interesting. But it's a fun film. I think that if you like sci-fi, that's one of the better sci-fis he's been in. I liked it better than what was that other sci-fi?
To be honest, I just can't stand him. So if he's in a movie, I'm like, not
Well,
gonna watch
there was a lot of good actors, American actors, a Scottish actor, Billy Connolly that I absolutely love. Then on the Japanese side, all those actors were just amazing. The Last Samurai movie, I mean, I wish it could be count as a foreign film. I might have picked that one, but it's not.
I didn't like it, but it was more of just I don't like the time frame, and I don't like the fact they had an American. It wasn't the fact they had Tom Cruise. I just didn't like that it was taken from a more of a
If
Western.
you could just take that aspect out of it.
I actually like the Japanese actor that played the Last Samurai.
Yeah.
I like him as an actor a lot.
Because I went round and round with somebody saying, well, I can't believe The Last Samurai is Tom Cruise. I'm like, no, The Last Samurai is that guy that, Tom Cruise was hanging out with at the end who died.
But I think that's a different, when we're talking about Rand or a lot of the Akira Kurosawa films, whenever he does things. Now, to be fair, he also does more modern stuff. He did one which is actually a pretty good film where the guy's dying of cancer and he's trying to build a park for some kids. That's actually a pretty good film too. Ichiru or something like that. But he's one of my favorite directors. He's probably my favorite director for Akira Kurosawa. But they also call him the most Western Japanese director out there. So take that as you will.
Yeah, that's fair. So there's more we could talk about this movie, but I think we covered the basics in most of it.
Well, we keep going off topic, so
yeah. I normally when we keep going off topic, I just like okay, it's time to start wrapping things up. Next Sunday, we will be doing The Great Silence, which is Shadow's Peak. I believe it's a Western. No?
We're doing Mark's movie next.
Mark's movie next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, Train to Busan. By the way, there's another depressing film at the end, so just be aware.
I think after we're done with the depressing movie,
but my movie will be the following Sunday after that, which is The Great Silence by Sergio Corbucci, 1968. It is in fact a spaghetti western for the most part, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
I think I probably will. I think it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, so I know I have to watch it via YouTube, or I'll find a way to watch it.
Sure.
Now there's two different endings, so I'm not sure which one we'll get to see. So there's that issue. I'm gonna have to do a little research before you guys go into watching it. I may end up having to watch both versions just to see which one, because there's a optimistic sort of happy ending and then the not so much ending. And I from what I hear, the happy ending was actually the original ending, and I'm not saying happy, but the less morose ending is the one we're probably going to want to watch because it was the original ending.
Gotcha.
From what I understand.
I'll check that one out. I think I don't know. We've done some serious movies back and forth. I think next couple movies we should pick for should be comedies or at least a little bit more lighthearted.
All right. Okay. You know what? Since I did it, Lego Batman's going to be mine for comedies.
Lego
I don't have a
Batman.
problem with that.
Because that's, like I said, if I brought it up, I think it's really fun. It's one that you can watch with your kids. It's tongue in cheek, the whole thing. It does have the typical tropes, but it also has, it's I think it's a pretty good film. I enjoyed it a lot. So it does a little subversion, but it doesn't do it in the way of just say that's bad. That's not the way it does. It does the little subversion of how much, Batman is alone. It's like, no, you need other people too, Batman.
July, August. I don't know.
We'll do comedies, and after that, we'll do horror movies, right? No, I mean
Halloween.
the way things are going is we'll be in about probably mid-September,
Right.
and then so we'll be, for October, we'll do horror movies after the comedies.
That'll be, all we need is like one postponement or something like that, and we'll be pretty much squarely right smack dab in the middle of October, which is, how we do things here. Trying to, theme a month, so to speak, with, what's going on in the outside world. It only makes sense to, watch horror movies in October, not in, December or July.
Well, I'm looking at it. It only takes us anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to go through a topic. So, I think it'd work out really well to just simply say, we'll do comedies, and then after that, we'll do horror films. And then after that, we can do Christmas films again. I think that would work out pretty well. Instead of getting Christmas in January or late January into early February. But yeah. But I think that's.
Well, yeah, because if we do it right with the holidays, I'm not sure what day the actual holidays of Christmas and New Year's fall this year. If we start them in November-ish, the end of November, we could be done by January, and New Year start with some other topic, preferably not winter or holidays or those kinds of things.
I did my Easter stuff. I don't think we have to do that again.
No, that was actually I enjoyed that month a lot. It was good to see some of those old movies again that I literally hadn't seen in almost 50 years, and Jackie enjoyed the hell out of them, which was another bonus as well. And he needed to see those when he could actually understand and appreciate everything about it. For the most part, when I saw them, I was too young to be able to appreciate any of what was going on.
I just don't want to do Ben Hur again. Or Ten Commandments, at least for another several years.
No.
Even Alcid was great. Are you kidding? That was a great one too. That was a really good freaking movie.
Oh, I'm not saying it wasn't a good movie. I'm just saying I'm not in a big hurry to watch it again.
No, I think those are those kind of films you watch.
Believe it or not, though, I believe it isn't Ben Hur Brian's favorite movie of all time. I find that absolutely awesome.
Whose is it?
Brian from World War II.
Oh, okay.
That's like his favorite movie of all time. I would have never guessed. I would have figured that many other movies would have been that movie. But that's freaking epic.
Indiana Jones, The Keep. There's
right. I could picture that being the case, but it just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover. And
Indiana Jones.
There are only 2 Indiana Jones movies.
3. Well, yeah.
Actually, 2. I agree with you, Shadow, but I'm putting there's now 3.
Kaliman.
There are 3 Indiana Jones movies.
All the way up with a red hot poker for that movie.
No, I'm not talking. No, I'm talking about the Ark of the Covenant. I'm talking about the Last Crusade, and I'm talking about the most recent one.
I've heard mixed feelings about it. I've heard you say it was okay.
I will never watch the most recent one. I will never give them one. Why? Because from everything I hear, I don't like it. I don't like the idea of anything about it.
What's the idea? What do you think it's about?
Destroying a franchise.
It doesn't destroy a franchise of anything else. It puts it back to its original stock.
I don't know. I've heard different things, but at the end of the day, here's the problem I have with it. It just doesn't interest me enough to go see it.
That I get.
Yeah,
This one feels this one feels like Indiana Jones, like the first, like the Ark of the Covenant did, and the Last Crusade did. And for those who haven't seen the movie, here's a spoiler: the best thing that they did right off the bat is they killed the son.
Oh wow!
Shia LaBeouf is not in this movie. It was awesome.
I'll never know.
It's all right. I'm just telling you, you're missing out on a good. This one was actually a good one. To each their own madness, man. To each their own madness. Plus, this is the only franchise where they haven't, changed out the main actor.
What's that?
Well, they haven't tried to change out the main actor. Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. No one else will ever be able to play Indiana Jones other than in young Indiana Jones, the TV series.
I'm going to say this much. At the end of the day, this is what I've heard, is there were enough reshoots because it was so bad for the original thing. But they should have stopped at The Last Crusade. The problem I have with it is you're bringing back franchises that were effectively complete and done. And, well, I hate saying this, the Hollywood shows just how intellectually bankrupt it is, and the fact that they can't use original franchises or things that are new. And it's not that you couldn't do an Indiana Jones style, just don't use Indiana Jones. That's the problem I have with it. It's like, well, we're going to use Indiana Jones even though it came out 40 years ago. Like, what? That how many sequels are there?
Right. I can't even picture if Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark came out today for the very first time. I think it would be an absolute flop.
I don't know if it would be an absolute flop. I would say this much: it would be a sleeper hit, very much like John Wick was. Or what was another? There was another one that, and maybe I just missed it because I wasn't watching TV too much. But the original Pirates of the Caribbean, I went because it just looked like it was a fun film. The problem is that they franchised it up to the point that you keep making films until they're really bad. You don't know when to say, okay, it's done. We're going to leave it alone. I think that's part of the problem I have with Hollywood. Is, we can complain about everything else, but guys, have an original IP somewhere. It's not there. There are thousands of books, thousands. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the, if you're going to do fantasy.
The problem, I think the problem with original IPs in this era is that as soon as anyone shows an interest in your IP, you instantly know that it's actually worth 100 times your wildest dreams, and people's greed gets the better of them.
Well, I think part of it comes down to, in a lot of cases, is, and this is true until more recently, you were trying to condense a 10 or 15 hour book into a 2-hour movie, and it's always going to fail. I mean, that was the problem that they had with the original Dune, is they cut so much of it that if you weren't familiar with the original source material, you were lost. And, when they brought it up on the television, when they added all the extra time in there, that made a big difference to explain the world. But most people don't want to sit 4 hours in a movie, just to be fair.
Because they don't have intermissions, and, the prices are exorbitant.
Well, what's exorbitant? To me, $10 is not a big deal.
I'm not talking the ticket price. I'm talking the concession stands.
They're a bit much.
They've always been higher than they should be. I'm not saying go back to nickel coats and that sort of thing, but they've always been exorbitant. But now it's to the point where we know better. We all know better.
Well, part of me goes for this is when I go to the Alamo Draft House when I go to see a film, is they have a full meal there. So, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but I'm okay with that. You know what? If I'm going to buy a Philly
No,
cheese,
that actually sounds like and I'm not going to say a better way, but a nice change of pace from the usual. We're going to try to do an arm and a leg, and uh,
yeah, I mean,
for,
the one I go to is they have a waiter or a waitress, whatever you want to call her. They have a server come in front of you. You have a full menu. It's a full meal. So if you, not saying everything, but let's say if you go out at night, you're not wasting the movie and then going to dinner. You're having it all at once, and that's pretty nice. And I think that's a better way of doing it. Is it more expensive? Yeah, but it's not that much different than going to a normal place, and the food is cooked on site, which makes a big difference.
Here's another way to look at it, though. Yeah. Me and a couple of buddies were thinking about going out clubbing a couple nights ago for his birthday, and we're calling around seeing what beer, who's got what specials. I'm not saying either one of you guys were big bar guys. I'm not going to put that particular hat on either one of you guys. But back when I used to do the club scene,
yeah.
You were there was no more than maybe like $5 to $10 as a cover charge just to get into the freaking door. Which to me is like, okay, that makes sense because you're once you get inside, you're not guaranteed to be drinking all night. You're not guaranteed to be spending money outside of maybe having 2 beers. I get it. That somewhat made sense to me. Now,
and there was live music.
What? And if they have live music, live music.
Everywhere I went back when I would do that, that was guaranteed. If it wasn't live music, why even go?
Right, and I get that. I'm just saying from my experience, cover charge for 3 of the places that we're talking about were $30 each.
Wow.
No live music and no drink specials, but they want $30 to get in, and these are not strip clubs.
Wow, I mean,
so $30 to get in compared to me spending maybe $15 at the movie theater,
or buying a case of beer and hanging out with the bros.
Right. Well, yeah. It's cheaper to drink. It's cheaper to buy and go home, but to certain degrees, and if you get too drunk, you just crash out on your buddy's couch. I get it. I've been there. I'm sure.
Back in the day, at least 2 of my friends had pool tables, so it was like, okay, we're gonna play some pool, gonna drink some alcohol, done deal. Or you're gonna go to a club and you're gonna go to the club for the band and not for the booze.
Right. I don't know. I pay $25 a month to AMC to go see 3 movies a month. That I don't have to pay 3 movies a week for a month. Out of the month, I probably end up seeing. I don't see 3 movies a week. I end up probably seeing 1 or 2 a week. And it's like the newest one is about ready to pop about the guy who created the A-bomb or the Oppenheimer, or however the hell you pronounce his name.
Oppenheimer.
I really want to see that movie. My daughter really wants to go see Barbie. I know how this is going to work. I only have to buy 1 ticket, and that's hers. She can go see Barbie. I'll go see the movie I want to watch.
Well, I'm not against any of that. My whole thing is we have 100 years of movies. There are enough movies that you can watch twice and still have everything fresh and new in there.
I just recently watched Casablanca again just because I wanted to.
Oh, after I told you?
I really hate the main character, though. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of those things, I think, that are, whether it's Casablanca, the Magnificent Seven. I would go watch it. I would go watch it in a theater again. What amazes me is that theaters are not.
No shit, huh? Oh God, I wish they would actually do that. Instead of bringing out garbage movies, how about bring back the classics?
AMC does that. AMC does bring back the old Enter the Dragons having its 50th anniversary, and they're going to be re-showing it in certain theaters.
That's cool. Where I live, that's not a thing.
Well,
But I mean, to me, movie theaters would do much better to just show a lot of the old stuff as a dollar theater. And I like going out, and I don't mind eating while I'm sitting there because now I don't feel like I have to go eat afterwards. If the food's decent, like I want actual fresh food cooked on site, kind of thing. And it's not that hard.
Well, yeah, and after mowing through a bucket of popcorn, who has any room left?
well, after mowing through a bucket of popcorn, I'm looking to the closest bathroom because that butter's not for seasoning. For the popcorn, it's a loop your inner, so it slides right out.
But and
He's not wrong, folks. He's not wrong.
well, I just mentioned like the Alamo Draft House here. The Alamo Draft House, I say here, it's down in Austin.
Do you own stock in this place? Because
No, I've just been going there since I was since I was in my 20s. Because what I like
they owe you a check, man. They owe you a check.
Well, what gets me about it is I remember a place when I lived in Florida, it was a dollar theater. And I used to like going there. Sure, okay, fine. The movie was 3 or 4 months out from release, but it was $1 to go in. You'd sit down, you grab your drinks, they put some food in front of you, and it's like, okay, fine. You know what? I'm paying, twice what a meal might cost. A cheap meal. It wasn't the greatest, but they would still have like sandwiches, pizza, usually something, very similar to what you could get at Chili's, something of that sort. I'm not saying it's the greatest, but it was still.
I fucking love Chili's. What are you talking about, man?
But that's what I'm saying is it would be about that equivalent level of food.
Chili's kills me each and every time.
Which one?
Chili's.
I try to go to any place where they have fresh food myself, where they hand make stuff, but. But my whole point was that the quality of the food. It was about that, so you know what to expect.
Well, here's the thing, kind of is going to be a little bit interesting. I don't actually expect it to go this way, but if it does, it'd be kind of cool. Hollywood's on strike right now for some of the best reasons. For some of the best reasons, Hollywood's on strike.
The worst reasons.
I'll get into that probably. I'll talk about that. I'll probably do it just like a random chat where we could talk about that. But we don't know how long the strike is going to be. I'm not saying this is going to be the end of Hollywood, but there might be a chance for theaters to go back to the old collection of movies that we're talking about and say, hey, we know these are not new movies, but they're still good movies. And like I said, the 50th anniversary of Enter the Dragon, Bruce fucking Lee, one of the best movies he's ever put out next to Big Boss Man, is going to be showing at theaters. They just did Conan the Barbarian a couple months ago because of its 30th anniversary. I know at some point they're doing The Great Escape with Steve McQueen at some point. I mean, Hollywood sucks. But I don't think in my personal opinion, I don't think that the theaters need to pay for their sins.
Well, so when I was in the Navy, they used to, and whenever I've been around military bases, they would show movies that were 10 to 20 years old. And yet you get kids, because the average age was probably anywhere from 18 to 22. Going to these theaters, they would be packed. I remember going and seeing Star Wars. It had the first and I think it was Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It had 2 of the 3, of the original. The place was packed, absolutely packed. Another time they had Alien, they would do a double feature. They would do Alien and Logan's Run. And we're talking in the early 90s. So these are not new films in any way. I know that, like you're saying, but the Alamo Draft House here one time did. They were showing the original Planet of the Apes, and they would do stuff like that. Again, if your money's coming from concessions, to me the best thing to do is do a double feature. And why do you do a double feature? Because people are stuck in the seat for 4 hours. Guess what they're going to do between films 2 and between the first and second film? They're going to go to the restroom, and then they're going to buy a bunch of popcorn and drinks because And it's
my god! It's like I I went to go see Indiana Jones for the second time, and I'm sitting next to this guy that's probably in his 70 years old, and he says, "I love these movies, even the bad ones. I still love these movies."
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Cool." And we're sitting talking about it. He's like, "What movie do you remember? What was the first movie do you remember watching as a kid?" I'm like, "As a kid?" He's like, "Yeah, Aliens." It's like, "How old are you?" I'm like, "I'm turning 40 in September." It's like, "You're not old enough to see it in theaters." No, I saw it at a drive-in when the sequel came out because they used to do double features back then. Showed the original, then the sequel. He's like, "Oh
Don't
my."
even get me started on drive-ins, man. That was an absolute crime against humanity, closing those down.
I'm going to say this much. They have one in Fort Worth. I think it's called Coyote Drive-In or whatever. And the problem I'm finding is a lot of times is that whoever the business owners aren't expanding out. You had food, but they would also bring in food trucks and live bands during the sunlight hours until it got dark during the summer. And, so it was an event. You didn't just go there to watch the movie. You went there to enjoy the people watching and everything else until it got dark around 9 o'clock. I think they opened up at 7. And of
So
course,
every drive-in theater we had like a playground for the kids. People would get
I
there
love the
sometimes 2 hours early. Freaking the kids would run around the playground and be able to sit still for the freaking movie, get ice cream, get popcorn, those nasty ass, theater hot dogs, whatever, pizza,
hey,
all
those
kinds
were
of crap.
gifts.
And
Those hot dogs were gifts from God. They're better than the wizard fingers you get at the gas station. And if you know what I'm talking about, you're as old as I am. No, it's like a local park over in
and Fourth of
Florida.
July, if there was a drive-in 4th of July, they'd like to bring you fireworks.
Yeah,
that,
well,
that,
I'm
that
not
needs,
fireworked
that
out
needs
until
to make
next
a
year.
comeback.
well, the one in Fort Worth had like 10 screens. So you just turned your seat to whichever one you wanted to watch. And so if the kids wanted to go, like if you wanted to go, I'm just because I went to go see Jurassic Park, but if the kids wanted to go watch something like the Minions or whatever, all they had to do was turn around and watch the opposite way of what the parents were watching. And that's the way that they did it.
You could bring drive by. All you need to bring them back is an open lot, a big enough to be able to, for cars, and talk to somebody, a company that makes apps, and you put the app on. They charge you like $2 because you're listening to a movie through your iPhone, whatever. And each kid could, be like maybe it'll add up. Of course, it'll add up. So one person's watching one movie with headphones in his ears, and he's watching that movie. As the kids are watching another movie somewhere over here through their iPhone using their earphones.
And bring back the freaking station wagon just for that.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I saw people in their trucks, and the kids would sit in the back, in the bed, and the parents would sit in the cab, and that, they would be facing 2 different directions.
And
The
how many?
Subaru Brat was made for it.
I was about ready to say, and how many kids were conceived because of drive-ins?
But
You're not wrong. You're not
I'm
wrong.
just saying that I know of a place and that it was for a drive-in, and it was well maintained, but it was in a floodplain, so they couldn't build anything out there. And because it was in a floodplain, and you build your screens above the water level, so it worked out really well for them. They're like, well, so what if we get flooded?
There was a pool here locally. They used to do swim-in movies,
Yeah.
as they called it.
Well,
Again, more children conceived.
if you can get a good park,
But right?
Never go to a public jacuzzi. Just never get into a public jacuzzi. Anyways, everybody out there, we passed 2-hour and 3-minute mark. I got things I still need to do today before I can have a functioning week. Sorry, we were not able to do this last week. I had an issue that I was just not comfortable with showing my blown up face on YouTube because it was completely swollen over. Next week we'll be doing Mark, and hopefully Mark can join us, and we'll be talking about his movie. The following week will be Shadows movie, which will be a Western, go figure. but it's a foreign Western. So it's Western in some foreign country.
And it's not a movie that probably anybody would have seen. It's a pretty obscure one, but it looked freaking epic.
How is that any different than Bone Tomahawk? I mean, but that's fine. That's great.
After that, I think we're going to do lighthearted. I want to pick, even if it's guilty pleasures, lighthearted, it just has to be lighthearted. We've done a couple back-to-back months of serious. I mean, I try to pick some goofball movie. Granted, we did watch Spaceball. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Battle Wizard was a comedy. But for the most part, we've done some heavy movies. I want to do.
But yeah, it was a comedy.
What one?
Unintentional comedies.
Yeah, I think next month we're going to do guilty pleasures, but they have to be they have to be more lighthearted.
Yeah, it has to be fun. Yeah.
So as long as it's not the 1986 Care Bears movie, I don't care.
Ooh, Goonies.
Goonies never say die.
What's
Land
that?
Before Time?
No, Land Before Time. If you did not cry in certain parts of that movie, you do not have a soul.
Fievel, whatever.
The American Tale. Yeah, that was a good one too.
I mean, there's a lot of things
Secret
in
in
there.
Him, that was a good one too.
Yeah, well, I was trying to think of things that are fun and uplifting for that, but I think
We should do that sometime in the road. We all have kids. Pick out that one movie from your movies from my childhood are different than movies from your guys' childhood. But that one movie when we were kids that we absolutely love to share with our kids, even if it's in there tied down, gagged, screaming, and kicking.
It was called The Magnificent Seven. No.
Trust me, I got movies. I try to watch with my daughter to watch Goonies with me. I tried to get her to watch Gremlins with me. I tried to watch, these are the movies.
I'm trying to get Jackie to watch Logan's Run. That is,
you know how many times he will say "gay" in one scene.
If it's the scene I'm thinking of, yeah, he'll whatever. But
every time he says "gay," it's gonna be a drinking. We all have to have drinks next to us. It's gonna be like Legion of Myth. He said "gay," take a drink.
No, I don't want to die of alcohol poisoning.
I'm gonna make this like rainbow color
Kool-Aid. Drink water all day long. It's a freaking 100. It was 109 here yesterday.
With that being said, y'all have a good weekend out there. We'll see you next week. I'm sure Shadow has things that Shadow, do you have anything going on this week?
Well, I've got a game tonight on Rick's channel. That's 28mm RPG. We'll be playing a one-shot of Traveler. The rest of the week is going to be pretty light. I'm going to do some reviews and things like that, but until the little guy gets back home, we've got a stack of boxes piling up from recent deliveries that are going to color the entire month of August with good old-fashioned Western greatness. I'm sure you guys can guess it finally arrived after 4 freaking years of Kickstarter shenanigans, but it's going to be pretty good. We're going to have some fun.
If you find that you don't have room for your trash that you just got done painting, big brother, your little brother right here.
I'm going to be giving away maybe 2 of them in the month of August because it will be our 3-year anniversary on YouTube.
Well, my birthday is in September. I will take that as a birthday gift.
We'll see what happens. We're also going to be getting some donations from Emperor's Choice for you Arduin fans. So we'll be giving away some Arduin goodness as well as some Dungeons and Lasers goodness. And I might even throw in some other stuff just to make some room because I've got Kickstarters coming in as well as Kickstarters I'm backing this month, which not a good time, but there's some really good stuff out there that looks to be only about a year-long wait. So I need to make some space.
Yeah, I got a Kickstarter, and I've been told it might be a year out before I get it. That's okay. I'm a patient person. with that all being said, look for Shadow and Sun on this coming week on YouTube. Oh, now he doesn't have his own channel as of yet, but if he does, it'll be a cooking channel on how to make the perfect ribeye. Because me and that man have talked about it.
Watching, dude. I'd be one of your first subs. Just saying.
With that being said, Omanel, I'm sure I'll see you on EO Geeks channel on anything that DM James is doing. If I can get some time this week, me and you might have to do something talking about whatever, how to make that perfect ribeye, most likely. So you people in chat, you will see Omanel on other people's channels. He doesn't have his own channel as of yet, but when he does, it will be about cooking. He will be the Iron Chef version of YouTube. It will be amazing. Wow. Anyways, everybody have a good weekend. Stay safe. For some of you guys out there, the weather is crazy. For everybody else, the weather is disgusting. Be good to each other. Love each other. And go watch good movies.
Most of.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.